The following is a production of Salt and Light Radio in Boise, Idaho. Kick off your work boots and pull up a boulder. It's time for Man Cave, discussing the issues that affect Catholic men in today's culture. Grab your favorite beverage, pick out a comfy spot around the campfire, and enjoy today's conversation with our two favorite cavemen, Pat King and Brian Howe.
Hey, welcome back to Man Cave. If you remember last week, part one of our Father's Day special, Pat and I were sharing memories of how our respective fathers brought us up. This week, we thought we would flip that coin and we'll share stories of how we are raising our kids. Was it the same? Is it a little bit different? Stick around and find out. It's part two of our Father's Day special of Man Cave.
Right. It was Daddy's home, and it would run to the, and I loved that. I really did. And so I took advantage of that. I tried to make my time for the kids. Now, I would ask my wife, what do you need? You need to go to the store? I'll take the kids. And I'm not saying I did everything perfectly right, but I would make sure that the kids were the focus because they were probably in my wife's hair. And she needed some downtime after being with the kids. And my days were 8, 9, 10, 12-hour days. I usually came home dirty and stinky, but my kids didn't care. Thank goodness they didn't care. Now at this age, they would, Dad, you stink, you stink. But, so I would come home and I would greet my children. And this isn't something I learned from my dad. It wasn't something that my dad said, this is a responsibility. His responsibility to us was financial, duty, obligation. I got all these kids, I got to pay for them, But once the focus was off the earning the wage, it became the kids, the family, the children. And so I would take them away so she could either cook, do laundry, whatever, or go to the store. And I hope no one has to get to a point where you have a handicapped child to find that niche or that need. But so I would spend the rest of the evening with my family. And I would, after the kids were put to bed and my wife and I would communicate a little bit, I would go back out to do my office because I owned the business.
Right.
It wasn't like I could just put up things and things took care of themselves. No, I would either have to get very early the next morning, which is always harder to do, or stay up late 1, 2 o'clock in the morning doing the paperwork end of the business. And that's what I did. I would, the kids were, ready to go to bed 8, 9 o'clock at night, and I would do that. We'd eat together. We'd do whatever we could, and then I'd go back out and do the paperwork. And that was a nightly thing. And when we got in clients and customers and routes and this and that, you got to keep track of everything. And it was a regular routine. But I did that because that was the best way to be there when they were there, when they were awake. What about you?
I guess thinking back, especially with the twins, and this is, of course, at the height of my mental illness that I battled, that depending on how many red lights I hit on the way home from work would determine what kind of mood I was in when I hit the doorway. And they could pretty much tell by the way I was walking from the driveway up to the front door.
You need a long driveway.
Yeah, it was like, let's run out and meet Dad, or I'm going to go do my homework in my bedroom.
I'm going to hide.
Call me when dinner's ready. So, unfortunately, I don't know what my twins, what the boys' memory of me at that time, was. With the next batch, yeah, same thing. I just think that just depending on what kind of day I had at work. The last 10 years being here at Salt and Light, I've been a completely different person as far as, loving my work, getting fulfillment out of it. There's not the stress and the anger that I had in commercial radio. I don't bring that home. So I guess that might be the lesson there is to, keep work at work, keep home at home. It was difficult back then. It's a lot easier now. And where you own the business, you didn't have that luxury of being able to
never
work
left.
at work.
It was always. And then, your wife would ask you questions about work because she wanted to know what was going on.
How was your day?
You don't
want to know.
You don't want to know. this dumb employee I just hired, brand new string trimmer, he just dropped it and split the gas tank.
Yeah.
And that happened.
Yeah.
Not once, but more than once. Not by the same guy, of course, because it usually didn't last very long with that guy. But so I look back on my initial start with my children as even though my grandfather, now I do want to talk about my grandfather because he was instrumental in the devotion of my faith and what I do for a living. He was very instrumental in that, but he was a man of few words. He was more of a shower, a leader that way. But my dad's imprint, even though I kept saying to myself, I do not want to be like my father. Yeah. Most children want to be like they want to be like their father, but they want to be loved and nurtured like their mother. They want to honor and respect their mother because they were the nurturer. Right. They were the ones that coddled them and changed their diapers and all that stuff. They were the ones for every broken skinned knee and all that, bloody noses and all that. The father was usually the worker, not so much anymore, but I look back, and this is the nice thing about looking back, and this is what our hope is, that our situations, our life stories help you as young fathers early on in your marriage and life with kids or not kids yet, helps you to understand how to hopefully change, and because you are the power to change.
Right.
You through your faith in God and the church, you have that power to change. You do not have to be a victim of your past. And I allowed my dad's upbringing to teach me how to be. And it took my son to teach me how I should be.
Right.
But I know that my early stage of marriage, my expectation of what the wife should be and how the relationship should be. I'm the head of the home. I'm the boss. You do as I say. My mom was very smart, but she was the mom of an era that was more of, yes, I'll do, yes, that's what I'll do. Your laundry's first, this stuff. But my dad's examples and how he treated us as we went on, the I'm the man, I don't cry, I don't show affection, that was me.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't want to be that man, it was hard to not, because that's how you're trained.
You're a product of your environment.
So do you feel that your first batch of kids, when you think back on it, was that a reflection on how your dad was with you?
I'm not sure. Because I was around every day, and I have a lot of great memories with boys that, we got down and wrestled on the floor. We went in the backyard and had water fights. I was there physically, and I think I was there most days emotionally as well, and even spiritually. I know we kind of went through a few different phases, and we went to different churches because we wanted the boys to have that spiritual upbringing. So I felt like I was a lot more involved than my dad was, because I wanted to make sure that was the case. If I ever have kids, I want to be involved in all aspects of their life. So I hope.
But what about the affection rate?
I was always affectionate. Okay. I loved my kids. I was there to watch them, be born. I watched all 4 of them be born. I cut the cord on 2 of the 4. So yeah, I fell in love with my kids the instant that they came into this world, and I've always been a touchy, feely, huggy, kissy type dad.
Well, yeah, don't get me wrong. I think I rocked my firstborn daughter every night. Mm-hmm. Okay, in fact, I made the comment. I said, I wish they'd never grow up beyond and then my next child never grew up, never got beyond that stage. But I loved my children. I wasn't, what's the word? I wasn't strange to the love factor. Mm-hmm. But when it came to like discipline or I was more curt, more judgment, more harsh.
Yeah.
I didn't know that softness that I could hug and I'd say I love you, but I don't think they ever believed me as they got older.
Right.
Because it was never, I think it was more done in a harsher, judgmental, critical manner. Yeah. My dad was very critical of us, and it was like, you disappoint me. You missed that that ground ball, you disappoint me. It was easy to disappoint. And I don't think my children, I tried to encourage them to try and do stuff like that, but I think they could see in my tone that I was still had that little disappointment or that little expectation that they didn't follow. I was a little harsh. I mean, when my girls were playing basketball at Greenleaf, a private Christian school, I was a little bit more, you could do better, not so critical of them, but I was like, I'd be harsh on the refs and all that stuff.
Which makes a kid grow up thinking I have to earn my parents' love. I
That's
have to do well, because if I don't, then dad won't love me. And that's, of course, not the case, but that's how a kid feels growing up, that I have to earn that
You don't think
love.
you're doing that.
Yeah.
But you never know what the kid's thinking because you're not them receiving what you're giving.
Right.
You think you're showing love by, okay, you could do this better. That's not what they really want to hear. And so,
but playing different sports growing up, I can count on one hand how many times my mother came and saw me play baseball, basketball, football over the years. I was in choir. I think my dad maybe watched me sing once. My mom was there for several times, but I think it was my grandmother that probably watched me play basketball more than anybody else. And so that leaves an empty spot too. It's like, well, I'm not even important enough for you to come and watch me perform, whether it's on a basketball court or up on a stage.
Well, so as I got older, my dad was at all the ball games. Even when I played, was I old enough? Yeah, I think I played Pop Warner in California in 9 or 10 years old. And my dad was there. That's when everybody got a trophy just for participating. I kept it, but it meant nothing to me. Thanks for showing up. But my dad encouraged the sports when he was with us and we were a family. When we came to Idaho, my mom was the one that, she's the only one that showed up after that. My grandparents would come a couple of times. Rupert is 45 minutes away from Twin Falls, and we played Minico. My grandfather would come. But he died when I was 16, but he got to see me play once. And my grandmother would cheer us on. She'd ask how we did. She was not a sports buff, but she only had one son. And she has 2 daughters that are nuns, and the rest of them worked at nursing. My mom was a nurse. Her younger sister was a nurse. So they weren't sports people. The kids weren't sports. Leo was, but the rest of them weren't. So she wasn't really a sports person, but she acted interested.
Right.
She
you're supporting the child.
Yeah, she was genuinely interested in all 60 some odd grandkids, and she made us all Afghans. It was incredible. But but I learned the sternness of fatherhood from my father, because it was like. He was always discerning us. He was always being critical. I think he wanted us to be better, but I don't think he knew how to do it in a way that was encouraging or loving. And that's kind of the thing I learned.
Yeah.
When my kids were young, I cut the umbilical cord on my daughters. My son was whisked away too fast for that to happen. But yeah, I was there for the births. In fact, I got yelled at from my wife for falling asleep because all our kids were born at like 3 a.m. And so it was hard on me sometimes, but I loved raising my children, but there's still things in my past from my father that taught me things that I didn't know I was doing. And so again, my son taught me those things. And the reason why was he was always in such need of care that you really just couldn't tell him, go to your room and figure it out yourself. It was, oh no, you need your feeding tube plugged in, okay, or you need to be cleaned up because you messed your diapers, again and smeared it all over the walls. Those are things you just couldn't stop and punish it. You couldn't punish him. There wasn't anything he would knowingly do that was wrong. And so you get to that point where you have to figure out, I've got to be kinder. I've got to be more loving. And that's where I learned how to love and be patient, was because my son didn't do things fast. You know, he didn't learn things fast. It took him almost 2 years to learn how to roll over and come to sit on his own.
Wow.
He never really crawled, but he scooted. I mean, that kid learned to scoot quick. You know, he'd get those elbows, those knees going, and he looked like a little tadpole. He would scoot across the ground. So, and it when you have those delays and you get to see what little progresses he makes, you find great joy. And that's where I learned to really love my children and not judge what they're incapable of doing, but learn to love everything that they do.
Right.
You know, and even when it came to punishment, you did it in a more loving manner so that they learned from it and not hate you for it.
Right.
For the punishment that they justly deserved.
Yeah.
You know, but, you know, so there's ways to change your life. And I will tell you that the closer I got to God, the closer even though I wasn't practicing Catholic, I was seeking to be closer to God and his leadership. Then my heart, I know my dad had, he may have loved God, he may have knew about, I know he believed in God, but it wasn't on the tip of his tongue.
Right.
And when you have God on the tip of your tongue, when you can actually thank God for the blessings you have, and you are willingly and actively seeking to know more about God in your life, I think that's where things start to change in you to be a better father. So what's your relationship with your twins?
Than it is parents. I mean, every once in a while they'll call and ask for some fatherly advice. In fact, this past weekend I helped one of the boys who's living here in Meridian now with a little home improvement project, and so that brought
you
back
and a home improvement. Oh
yeah,
boy.
yeah. It was just it was pretty simple. It wasn't plumbing or anything like that. So we always call a professional for things like that. But no, it brought back some memories of the many times that my dad saved my bacon for, you know, helping me out and saving me hundreds of dollars by teaching me how to do it myself. But no, we have a great relationship now. For being twins, they're as different as night and day. They have different interests, and so luckily they're things that I'm interested in. So we have relationships built on those particular, you know, subject matters. But no, I think we have a great relationship, and I often, you know, bring up divorcing their mom and how did that affect you? And, you know, I don't know what she's told you, but this is my take on it. And, you know, everybody's got a part to play. And I just want them to understand that no matter what happened between me and their mother, that I always loved them, that they were important to both of us. And I continue to apologize for whatever that might have done. Now that they're almost 30 years old, I can't believe that. But
I remember the first time I met you and your son together was at the vault with Bear Wozniak.
Right.
And you guys were happy as two peas in a pod, sitting on a couch, leaning back, stogie in one hand, a glass of whiskey in the other, and you guys were just like friends.
Yeah.
But father and son, I wish I'd taken a picture of it because it was incredible. It was like, oh, this is my son. I just thought it was some guy you were talking to.
No.
And you were just having a conversation, and so that's great that as they reach adulthood, because at this point, you've done the thing. You've done all you can to be the father.
Nothing more I can do.
But if he's still seeking your advice on, hey, Dad, help me with this home improvement project, that's the carrot.
Yeah,
you know, that's the caveat.
Because that's trust and love and participation. You know, it's just if I didn't love my dad, then I'm not going to call him and ask him over into my life. Right. So obviously there's still a relationship and there's feelings, and I hope that that's always going to be the case. I always want to be a part of my kid's life, no matter how old they are. So again, going back to a couple of episodes ago and talking about my dad, it was just a very complicated relationship the older that I got, because I grew spiritually, going back to what you were saying, and he did not. He sort of stayed stagnant. And he couldn't understand where I was at, and I never understood why. It's like, I'm trying to drag you along this spiritual journey, and you're not taking my hand. And it can sometimes be complicated the whole parent-child dynamic. But it shouldn't be. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, it
No.
comes down to unconditional love, and don't make your kids feel like they have to earn that.
Right.
You love them. They're your children.
Well, one of the things about the second episode, the third one dropped today. So the second episode you talked about, because you couldn't get back home for your father near his deathbed to be there, it actually opened up a better dialogue with your mother
Yep.
that allowed for some healing. And now I think you have a place to go from there to get better.
Yeah. So as scared to death as I was of her as a child, we did have a really good friendship when I was in my 20s and maybe even into my early 30s. But I don't know. I'm not sure where the train fell off the rails.
Right.
But yeah, now we have an opportunity to maybe try to get back to our relationship 30 years ago where we were more friends.
Right.
Her relationship is very complicated as well, being the disciplinarian.
Yeah.
She was left with two boys, two
she was on
rambunctious
her own a lot.
boys. She was on her own a lot, and so she was having to play both mother and father. And I did tell her when I was up there, it's like, I can remember nights you had to go to bed hungry. We were dirt poor. You were trying to feed two growing boys. I'm sure there were many nights that you went to bed hungry. I respect that. I honor that. What you went through raising David and it's incredible. You're an incredibly strong woman, and I just want you to know that,
Right.
that I respect what you did
Yeah.
raising us.
Well, so that was.
But that's a Mother's Day episode. We
Yes.
trying
Yes.
to stay on task.
Well, yeah, I just went down that road because your mom was. It just the benefit of the father's relationship in passing allowed you to at least open the door to something that hopefully your mom's in good health and she'll
Right.
be around for a while. You now then can, and through that healing, I think you can also probably, in my opinion, could heal that relationship with your father.
I hope so.
as well, because she probably has some insights that you don't know.
Exactly.
I mean, it's like my mom was never very good at talking. She was very good at telling us that. So I had this conversation with my mom once, and I needed to learn how to shave. And I've got some whiskers. I don't know what, and I had to have one of my older brothers show me how to shave. Well, that is like the worst thing you could ever do. They lord that over you forever. That's like, I taught you how to shave, and I really wanted my dad to teach me how to shave, I don't remember how old, 14, 15, but maybe even earlier than that. But my mom sat me down, and I was kind of crying and sad, and she says, your father's the one that's missing out. I know you want to please him, you want to get to know him, you can do everything you can to try, but when it comes down to it, he's the one that's going to look back and say, I missed out on their entire life. And when he turned 80, we had an 80th birthday for him. All siblings, all 7 of us were together in the room. And my dad broke down in tears and said, I've missed so much. And boy, I'm glad that I didn't miss that much with my kids. I had jobs where I would have traveled. Well, I was looking at taking on jobs because, being self-employed, without insurance, without any of those benefits, healthcare, retirement, pension, you really, I kept looking for things that would give me some of that security. Self-employed is always a risk.
Yeah.
I mean, in my lifetime of owning my business for nearly 30 years, I've lost entire fortunes 3 different times because of economic situations, the current politics going on right now, inflation, just bad business dealings, whatever. You can't control what other people, when you're in a relationship, do. And so you think there's secure ways to do this by having a job that has 401k and health care and all that stuff. Well, they can close up shop too, but you don't think that way.
Right.
And so when everything's dependent on you, you get a little more stress. And but my mom said, your dad, she never told us to hate him or dislike him.
Right.
She always tried to encourage us to try and to try to build a relationship. But she says, in the end, your father's the one missing out. And that was me. I think I spent an hour trying to talk to her. I said, I need to learn how to shave. And so, she talked to my older brother, Ken, to come in and show me how to shave. And he's the one I have the most problems with. But I hit him over the head with an iron because he was beating on me one time. But anyway, and he remembers that too. So I said, that's the last time he really messed with me, though, because he knew I'd fight back. But, but I wanted to say something about my grandfather. Even though from the time so when we first moved up here from California, I didn't get to go play baseball. And I hated my mom for that. And I don't have any, she just turned 90 yesterday. I mean, she's passed.
Right.
But she was born on May 31st. And, my uncle was the father figure at the time. He was the only brother of my mom, of 7 kids. And so we were dropped with a family of 5 and us, 5 and 4 kids, and that's a big house. And so I felt squeezed out, couldn't play baseball. I was angry at my mom. And so I went and stayed with my grandparents in Rupert for the summer. Mm-hmm. And that is where I learned to be a horticulturist, gardening. I didn't go to school for any of this, and I've done it for almost 40 years, but I spent time following my grandfather. Again, he's a man of few words, but he led by example, and he was the gentleman. Mm-hmm. He was the man that would open the door, come in and hug. He was a big, tall, about your size, big German guy, 100% German. My grandmother was, on my mom's side, was 100% Italian. So, she was short, he was tall. You don't know how that happened, but, they were Catholic. I think that's why they were No, they loved each other immensely. And so you saw that. You saw her care for him. You saw him loving her. And the church was important. I learned to respect and love the rosary from both my grandparents because every night before bed, we sat down, we lit an oil lantern, turned off all the other lights, and we said the rosary at night before bed. But my grandfather was the one that would lead me around all summer long and then let me just be a kid. And I enjoyed helping the customers and all that. I'll tell a quick story. My mom, I had very long hair. I was a Southern California boy at the time. I had long hair.
Having a hard time imagining that.
Yeah, well.
The way you look right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you why that came about. So I'm a California boy and living in Idaho, and I was going to be a California boy. I didn't want to be in Idaho, Hicktown, all that. So I'm working in the retail garden center, the floral shop and nursery, and I'm waiting on customers, and this older gentleman comes in. I didn't know a lot of my relatives, but they were all the bots and the henchites all lived in the area. So he comes in and he rings when you open the door, a little bell ring. I go, hi, how can I help you? And he stops and he looks at me, and he was an Italian. And he goes, I know you. You're one of Angela's girls. I ran out of there. I said, Mom, I need a haircut. Mom, I was called a girl. That ain't going to happen.
Wow.
Now, she was she just dropped me. I don't know. She'd come up for a visit. I don't know what was going on, but I think she'd moved. Timeline, don't remember. But she was in the kitchen with my mom, with my grandmother, and they were talking, and she goes, what? Because I'm shouting.
Yeah.
She said, Mom, I need a haircut. Well, why? Some old man came in and called me a girl. And didn't know later that was my Uncle Tony, my great Uncle Tony, and Italian, Tony Bott. And I thought there was a scheme going on here, but didn't know that right away. I had to get hair. She takes me right down, get the bar, get whacked away. I've had pretty much short hair ever since. But then I found out later, that's your great Uncle Tony. Mom, were you? No, I
had nothing to do with it. Wow.
So, but my grandparents were probably that calm in the storm between the exit from California to Idaho and the end of the relationship with my parents. We still didn't even know what was going on.
Yeah.
We just knew Dad wasn't coming back. And then we found out that we're stuck in Idaho permanently, which I've pretty much been ever. Well, I've made a trip back to California, but it really. I know that if we had stayed in California because of the absentee relationship of the father, traveling all the time, my mom still raising 7 of us, I was hanging around a bunch of kids that kind of, shoplifted and did things that were going to get us in trouble. And I look back at that time, was probably the best thing my mom ever did for us, was to move us out of that influence. Because I know things weren't happy at home, and I wasn't leading the right path. And spending that, so you never know how things work out in your life until you go back. And this, I think we've even talked about this. You need to write your story down. You need to tell it. You need to know it and learn it so that you can see where the changes have been or where you need to make changes.
Right.
Not to blame things on your past, but to know that you're in charge of your future and your destiny. And this is why returning to the church helped me, because I was angry at my past. Now I'm accepting of what happened, and I've changed it, so I'm not that person. But my Catholic faith has taught me in that summer with my grandfather and my grandmother. I mean, heck, I didn't work one day, and I didn't get to eat because I decided to go play. And my grandmother...
Workers are eaters.
Yeah, you don't work, you don't eat. And we earn our way around here. And so I played around all day in the canals and all that, came home and looking for a plate of food, and there wasn't. And my grandmother was the one, as soon as your plate was empty, she's plopping more food on. So to have her deny me food, and I begged and whined and cried, and she said, okay. So we had a nursery, and we would feed the workers for lunch. Bunch of 30, they had greenhouses and stuff that plants were being moved and watered and transplanted and grown, and orchard and stuff like that. And so at lunch she would feed it. Well, so I had to go out and peel potatoes and shuck corn and to get a plate of food. And I did that. And I tell you, again, another life's lesson.
Yeah.
You have to be productive. You have to learn. You have to earn your way. But those fond memories of that summer with my grandparents probably was the basis for me improving my life, because they were much different than my lifestyle before with my parents. And it taught me a love for my grandparents, taught me a love for my mom. If it hadn't happened, I don't know where I'd be.
Right. Yep.
So God works in mysterious ways.
Amen, brother. Amen. All right. Well, with Father's Day approaching, make sure that if your dad is still with you, that you love on him extra special and make him feel the way he's hopefully made you feel growing up and being his kiddo. And just,
you will change a father's heart by loving him unconditionally, regardless.
Yep.
Because the one thing, he may not have had a great childhood. He may not know how to love you properly.
Right.
Especially if you're an older kid with a mouth, that says, I hate you from time to time. You make mistakes as a kid. You make mistakes as an adult. Yes, it's upon the adult to make amends, to make things right. But sometimes a kid can change that just by the fact that he comes up and says, Dad, I'm sorry for what I said.
Yep.
And, I did that with my mom. I had to apologize a lot to my mom.
Well, as we do at the end of every Man Cave show, we want to pray, and we just wish you a happy Father's Day, and we will join you again next time. So, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Man Cave, a weekly podcast discussing the issues that affect Catholic men in today's culture. A production of Salt and Light Radio in Boise, Idaho. To learn more about our ministry, please visit our website, saltandlightradio.com.